Well, we are now just 3 weeks away from Selection Sunday, and it's time for us to do our now weekly little segment on bracketology. Looking forward to the Zags potential bracket and kind of breaking down different teams that are in that bracket, some matchups that the Zags might want to avoid. But let's dive right into it. ESPN's Joe Lunardi bracket is out, and I'll tell you what. Last time we did this, we talked about a potential Jalen Suggs, Cade Cunningham matchup, and how the NCAA always say that no, we don't do things like that for scheduling. We don't care about matchups, and it always happens.
Lies.
We know it's all about television.
Always is.
And currently, the way that it sits is the Zags are the number 1 overall seed.
Yep.
And they'd be playing the winner of Wagner, North Carolina A&T in the first round. In the second round, though, it would be potentially Oklahoma State or San Diego State in that round of 32 matchup.
Yeah, that's a great matchup. Either way it shakes out. I think the NCAA would love to see Jalen Suggs and Cade Cunningham go at it on the big stage, national TV. And Jalen Suggs and Cade Cunningham are not strangers. They've played in high school. It was an absolute showdown between Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren on that grassroots sizzle team as well. Cade Cunningham actually had Greg Brown from Texas on his squad, so two loaded teams that battled it out. And, of course, Jalen Suggs and Cade Cunningham as well played on that Team USA U19 team. So these guys are very familiar with each other. They would both be very aware of kind of what that game would mean in terms of draft stock when you have two top 3, top 4 picks battling it out. So just what a showdown that would be, man. And Oklahoma State, this is a team that coming into the year was looking at a postseason ban.
That's right.
A lot of people might be wondering, how are they in this? So what they did, they actually appealed that ban this season. From the beginning, I don't think they were going to, but obviously they realized what kind of team they had, and they had a shot to do something in March, they felt like. So they made an appeal, and because the NCAA has not made an answer on that, that's what's allowing them to play in this. So
yeah, as long as we don't have a word, which I do know some people did expect to have a word by now. So as long as the NCAA doesn't make a ruling on Oklahoma State, they will be eligible to play. And I'll tell you what, we're in the part of this mayhem at the end of the season that these seed lines are going to change. If Oklahoma State continues to play the way they've been playing, they're not going to be on that 8-9 line.
No.
We're going to see a lot of movement really all across the board these next few weeks, which will be fun to track. So you do have a potential 2 top 5 pro prospects playing in the round of 32 in Jalen Suggs versus Cade Cunningham. And then you fast forward to look at this potential Sweet 16 matchup. You could then move on to Jalen Suggs versus Evan Mobley, Dom Harris's former teammate, another top 5 NBA prospect.
Yeah, some sites have him going number 1.
Yeah, and USC's playing really good ball right now as well. There's some power rankings out there that have USC as a top 5 team, and they're currently in Region 1 sitting on that 5 line. So if you look forward in this bracket that ESPN has to the Sweet 16, the Zags would either be looking at USC or a Texas Tech rematch that I don't know if any of us are still, over yet.
Absolutely not. No, it's I would love to get another crack at a Texas Tech team. Just the way that last one shook out does not sit well with many Gonzaga fans. But that's also a matchup that you have to take seriously. Texas Tech is a great school. They are extremely well coached, and we are fully aware they focus on defense. They play a physical brand of defense as well. That it's kind of one of those where you do something consistently enough, it gets called a little bit differently. And not to say that Texas Tech is a team out there fouling nonstop, but they just play more physical, and refs accept that as that they're just a physical team. So they're a team that can cause anybody in the country, they can cause them problems. And that's just a matchup that would feel good to win, but one you got to take seriously.
I love when Chris Baird got thrown out of the recent game versus West Virginia.
That was so good.
He's just going off, but he makes sure to walk over and give Huggy over on the West Virginia bench a little fist bump before he walks off the floor.
Just the respect.
But that is, that Texas Tech matchup, they may not have the best team they've had, compared to that squad that knocked off Gonzaga almost won the national championship. But they do play a style of basketball that Gonzaga hasn't seen much of this year. They can definitely be disruptive. And then that USC team has a lot of talent as well. So not an easy round of 32 game if they end up getting Oklahoma State or San Diego State, at least their Twitter, their fans have wanted a piece of Gonzaga. I'm not sure they really want that heat. But not an easy round of 32 matchup, and not an easy Sweet 16 matchup if they get Tech or USC. And then you look forward to the other side of the bracket in their region in terms of what that Elite 8 matchup could be. The 2 seed is Villanova.
Sure.
We know Jay Wright. I mean, they've lost 2 of their last 4 games, but we know Jay Wright, a national championship coach, is going to have that team ready to play come March.
Yep.
There's also a Colorado team in that lower half that a lot of college basketball experts think could be kind of that dark horse team to make a Final Four. They've been kind of hit and miss. They lost to Oregon recently.
Sure.
And then Houston's in that lower half as well, that a lot of people thought you've had all year analysts put Houston or Michigan into, maybe they're in that Baylor-Gonzaga conversation. Houston's now lost 2 games in the last couple weeks as well.
Yeah, they've lost them, and I think what you see out of those losses is that Houston's offense is susceptible to some bad games. And, unfortunately, that's where they could run into some buzzsaws in March. The thing in March, most of your games are not going to be won. You're not usually looking at a 55 to 53 game score. Typically, March is which team is getting hot, right? And so they're bound to run into somebody. Whether that be Grand Canyon, who is an underrated mid-major team, or, could be Indiana, Colorado, could be any number of teams in that bottom half.
11 seed North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, they could run into somebody who just gets hot offensively, even if it's for one game. And if they, come out flat, that's just a loss they could take. But at the same time, Houston's been a great defensive team, one of the better defensive teams in the country by analytics. So, I mean, they have as good of a shot coming out of that bottom half, really, as anybody down there.
We talked about it the last week on these brackets, that this is a region that I think sets up favorably for the Zags.
Sure.
They still are getting that number 1 overall seed. I mean, we saw the reveal from the NCAA last weekend. They called it a razor-thin margin between Gonzaga and Baylor, and I think Zag fans do need to at least prepare themselves for, if Baylor wins out because they play in the Big 12.
That conference tourney carries a lot of weight.
They will most likely jump Gonzaga. If both teams finish undefeated, we just need to prepare ourselves that the Zags didn't do anything wrong as much as Baylor made it through that Big 12 slate. And so I think we need to prepare ourselves for that. Evan Maya previewed his bracketology tool that he's going to have on his website that runs simulations. He did have Gonzaga coming out on top. Baylor lost in the Sweet 16 to an Iowa team.
Yep.
So as more numbers get put in and more of these simulations come out, hit Clemson going to the Final Four.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting tidbits in there. But we also talked about teams that if you're the Zags, you want to avoid. And one of those teams was Ohio State. And the last time we talked about bracketology, we said Ohio State, aside from Baylor and Gonzaga, may be playing the best basketball of anyone. They have worked their way up to that 1 seed. And if you are a Gonzaga fan, you are rooting for Ohio State the rest of Big Ten play, including their conference championship, because that's not a team that you want to end up on that 2 line. And because of conference affiliations with the S-curve, all of a sudden the Buckeyes end up in the Zags bracket.
Yeah, you definitely do not want that. Ohio State's playing extremely hot, well-coached team. And Big Ten, I mean, they all play defense over there. And Ohio State's come through, and they're really starting to click on that end of things. And tell you what, man, Ohio State and Illinois is the other one for me. I think Illinois just has some incredible players in Coburn, as well as Dosunmu. I believe I said that correctly. Both just incredibly talented players. And those are just 2 teams that you really do not want in your region. Not to say that, of course, the Zags can beat anybody this year, but if you're choosing your bracket, you're not putting them in your bracket.
Yeah, Illinois currently on the 2 line. If the tournament started today, according to Joe Lenardi, they'd be taking on the Eastern Washington Eagles. That's an Eagles team, another upper left team that can make some noise in the tournament. They can pick off a team. I don't think
absolutely
Illinois is the right matchup per se, but
no.
I could see them really giving Iowa a game on that 2 line, a Houston team.
I mean, for me, based on the 2 seeds we see, I think if Eastern can get in, which it looks like they will, and they draw anybody except, let's see here, anybody except, oh man, I'm blanking, Michigan or Illinois. Michigan or Illinois. Those are the 2 seeds I don't think you want as an Eastern Eagle fan. But anybody else along those lines, Eastern can run with. I mean, we've seen them play multiple Pac-12 teams this year and run with every single one of them, and that was early on, and they've been playing better ball now. Coach Leggins out there really has them connecting and playing well, so that's just a team, man. They can get hot, and I think that's an easy one to overlook for a lot of what would probably be a 2 or 3 seed team if they would get in that first round.
There was an article that actually came out overnight on 538 just talking about, is it inevitable that Gonzaga and Baylor are just on a collision course to make the NCAA championship? And here's the thing. We can talk about brackets all we want, talk about matchups, but if either of those teams don't make the Final Four, it's going to be an enormous letdown.
Absolutely.
And so, I think Mark Few, I think that Scott Drew down at Baylor are kind of have that mindset of give us whoever. It doesn't matter who our 2 seed is or our 5 seed.
Yeah.
We should be able to take care of business.
Yep.
And so if either of those teams lose, whether it be in the round of 32, the Sweet 16, it's going to be a monumental upset.
Yeah, we're in a lot of brackets.
And we're really at this point, like we said last week, we're talking about slate Gonzaga and Baylor into the Final Four. Who are your other 2 teams? Ohio State has emerged as a team that definitely could fit that. And me and you have said this off air. You have Gonzaga and Baylor. You have maybe 2 or 3 other teams that are in that next tier, but the difference between maybe the 6th overall seed in the NCAA tournament and the 25th overall seed is not a big difference. And
pretty negligible this year.
It feels like a year that is we're filling out those brackets. I think there's going to be a lot of brackets ruined, especially with the whole thing being in Indianapolis and these different gyms, totally different setup. This would not be a surprise at all if you got another Loyola situation, if you got a team like Belmont making the Final Four, because I think the door is wide open for those other 2 Final Four spots.
Yeah, I mean, they call it March Madness, and this year of all years just feels like a year where the madness is going to shine through. So, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think we could see a number of teams making a run, and the bracket pools are going to be interesting this year, man. This is not a year where you can just go chalk down the board. I mean, you have sure your 2 chalk choices in Gonzaga and Baylor that most people are going to take very deep. But beyond that, it really just comes down to matchups and who's playing hot at that time. So, especially coming off a year where we miss it, man, this is just going to be a year where I think we're just going to see a ton of good games, especially that opening 4 days. It's just going to be good game after good game. And tell you what, man, I know I'm going to be posted on the couch enjoying that.
Yeah, we're 3 weeks away from having a bracket. Once that bracket comes out, we will break it down on this show, kind of give some of our insights. Hope to have some other people on the show as well, kind of breaking that down. But 3 weeks from now, we will know the Zags' potential matchups.
Yep.
We won't have to, make assumptions or guesses anymore. It will be out there. And then we'll find out if this Mark Few-led Gonzaga team can make their second Final Four in program history.